Hi, everyone. Myself and Lindsay are really happy to be here and to be showing you how we've collaborated using GIS to produce a one-map application. So a little bit about us. We're both here representing SHINE. So SHINE is Social Housing Innovation Northeast. So what we are is we're a collective group of 24 organisations, housing organisations who come together often to tackle common challenges. We were formed in 2023 at the Northumbrian Water Innovation Festival. And off the back of that, we then led on to our one map approach. So first of all, I'm going to talk you through the purpose and the value of having GIS within a social housing background. And then pass you over to Lindsay, who will look at and show you kind of the journey we took to success. And then we'll discuss and have a look at some of the ways we're already making a big impact. So GIS and social housing. So as a sector, we are a heavy location-based industry. Knowing where our assets are and where our land is really, really important. It enables us to be able to track trends and understand how geographies may be affecting our assets. So for instance, we could be looking at how repair data sets and looking at how where we have intensity and informing our investment strategies. The other thing GIS can do is it really pulls in data from a wide range of places, meaning we can kind of pull in open source data to help us understand our communities a bit better, and that gives us a real holistic approach to problem solving. And as one of my major things I love about GIS is the way that you can present information and share information in a really user-friendly way. So then if we're all doing all of this in our own organisations, that gets to the question of why would we collaborate across the sector? So GIS as that collaboration tool. We all operate in a shared geography, so there's nowhere where one organisation finishes and the next one begins. We're all kind of in the same area. This map here, you can see that's just a 1 kilometre square. You can see the number of housing associations within that. Obviously, we can come together and present all of our information in one easy place, and then pull in further information from the open source information to kind of to improve what we have, to further inform us. And then we can kind of see where those key areas are, where those organisations overlap, and that will really further boost that holistic approach that we have to problem solving. And that's when we get the real benefits of the target-driven decision-making. So I'm going to pass you over to Lindsay now, who's going to run you through our journey.
Thanks, Rebecca. Afternoon, everyone. So in this next section, I'm going to talk about our journey to success and how we created one map. So as Rebecca said, SHINE is all about collaboration. And not long after the SHINE group formed, some of the SHINE members came to me and said, we have this innovative idea. And they said, can we create a shared asset web map that will help us collaborate more effectively? So that set us off on our 1-year epic journey to creating one map. Well, it felt epic at the time, maybe not so much now. So over the next few slides, I'm going to go through some of the milestones that we went through to create one map. I'm going to start with our origins in July 2024. I'll talk through some of the problems that we had to face and overcome, and then end with the launch of one map, which was in June 2025. So we set off in July of 2024 at the Northumbrian Water Innovation Festival, where we held a GIS sprint called A Year's Worth of Work in a Week. And it was really well attended by social housing providers, GIS specialists, and data analysts. And we all gathered in a tent in the rain, because it was the summer. As you know, these things always tend to happen. And we did indeed create a prototype within 5 days. But honestly, that was just very much the start. It took us a whole year to develop one map. So later that summer, the first thing that we did is we created the GIS Club. And it did start out as a bit of a joke, that name, but we've fully embraced it now, haven't we? As you know, GIS people tend to do. It includes GIS representatives from our 8 data contributors that you can see up there. Prior to the launch, we would meet once a fortnight and just chat through some of the problems that we knew that we'd have and share those ideas as well, which was crucial for the development. So moving into the autumn-winter of 2024, we had to start thinking about some of those challenges. And the first set of those were to do with software and access considerations. We had to think about which GIS software we were going to use, and it might come as no surprise that we landed on Esri software, specifically ArcGIS Online. Some of our original data contributors already were using it, so it made sense to go with that, but we also knew it would provide us with the tools that we needed as well. Then once we knew which software, we had to decide which application we were going to go with. And for that, we went with Experience Builder, because we knew it would give us the flexibility that we needed to design the application. We could include our own branding so that our members would know and recognize it as one of our own applications. And then finally, how were our members going to be able to access this application? And for that, we used the partner collaboration setting, which is available in ArcGIS Online. Basically, we didn't want one map to be publicly accessible, so this gave us the security to know that we could just reach the target audience that it was intended for. So in the second set of challenges, it was all to do with data considerations. And we needed to decide which internal data sets we wanted to use. So obviously, assets was going to be our most important one. But to supplement that, we pulled in energy performance certificate rated information, so we could get an idea of where our worst performing assets were in relation to energy. We also pulled in antisocial behaviour, so we could get an idea of what was happening in our estates and neighbourhoods where we operate. And we also pulled in some damp and mould as well to see if we could identify any hotspot areas to see where it was, more of a problem. But then before we could load all that into one map, we had the fun topic of data standardization. Yeah, and what we did to get around that was we just simply created an Excel spreadsheet for each one of our main data sets, and it outlined which fields we wanted to include and which data was to go in those fields. Nothing more complicated than that, really. But it really helps further down the line if you have that data standardized, if you want to symbolize data in a web map, and also if you want to do analytics. It just makes life easier. Then finally, which external data sets did we want to include? Because we wanted to supplement what we already had. And for that, we'll lean quite heavily on the ArcGIS Living Atlas. We pulled in information including demographics, environment information, and boundary information. Like I said, to give us that holistic approach of what was happening in our neighbourhoods. So then we're moving into the spring of 2025, and this was the point of no return on our journey. We had to actually start building the app rather than just talking about it. So like I said, we went with Experience Builder. You don't have to be a developer to use Experience Builder. I acknowledge that parts of it can be tricky to use if you're new to it, but there's lots of online support that you can use. I know that I did. So to start off with, we used the off-the-shelf widgets that are available, and you can just drag and drop and pop them into the application. And to start off with, we used the map widget because we wanted to make one map-centric. We also included the layer widget, the legend widget. We included multiple filter data widgets so that it was easier for our members to be able to find the data that they wanted. We included lots of chart widgets as well, so our users could see the information at a glance. The chart widgets are all connected to the map widgets, so when you zoom in, it all filters accordingly. And finally, we included some of the map tools, such as the drawing tool and the print tool, because we wanted to make one map a self-service tool for our members. And finally, we reached the point to launch One Map, and we did this at the Shine Summer Meeting in, June 2025. It was really well attended by all the social housing providers, and lots of use cases were put forward. I really think our members got how powerful it is to be able to see where your neighbouring housing associations' assets are in relation to where yours are. I think historically, as housing associations, we've worked in isolation, and sometimes we can impose invisible boundaries in our neighbourhoods based on where our assets are. And One Map really does break down those barriers to facilitate collaboration. It can help with things like shared managed services and lots more. So once we launched, we started making an impact pretty much straight away. HENI, which is the Housing Employability Network Northeast Group, they reached out to us, and said, could we start using OneMap to help support us for a bid that they were submitting to secure funding for economically inactive residents in the North East? So we said, right, yeah, let's see what we've got. And we pulled in information for female population statistics from the Office for National Statistics. We included the index of multiple deprivation data, including employment, income, and health. But crucially, on top of that, we were able to overlay where our assets were. And that meant that we identified 3 focused areas, which were based on data-driven decision-making and not just best guesstimates. And Henny really felt like that gave them their unique selling point for the bid. So that was a great success. Now I'm going to pass you back over to Rebecca, who's going to give a demo of OneMap of what I've been talking about.
Well, thanks very much, Lindsay. So as you can see, this is a view of our OneMap application. You can see that we've got a lot of properties in there, and we have properties from the Scottish border at Berwick all the way down to Kingston upon Hull. So what we wanted to do with this was make it as user-friendly as possible and easy to use for both the GIS professional and for a non-GIS user. So we have our layer list, a legend, then we have the filter pane, which helps us to break that information down into manageable chunks, and then some charts to review the data and really interrogate what we are seeing on the map. We have a lot of information on there, so we broke it down into certain pages. We have information on assets, on people, the environment, and then those all-important geographical boundaries where we operate within. The other thing we included was the help and info page. This really enables our users to look at the data and understand what the data is showing. But it also gives the key contacts if they're having difficulties with the functionality of the map itself. So we don't have a lot of time today, so really we only have time to go through one quick example. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to search for Thornaby-on-Tees in Teesside. As you can see, we've got 3 housing associations that have quite a substantial number of properties in a very small area. And then what we can do is we can look at the other data sets that we have. So we're going to have a look at some police crime data. So if you zoom out at this point, you can see that it's actually, comparably to the area around it, it is a fairly high crime area. So when we want to further interrogate that, and what we've got is other data sets, such as predominant crime type. And you can see there's a few predominant crime types in this area. And particularly if you take your eye to the blue area, that is predominant crime type, vandalism and property damage. And what you can see here is there is 2 clear housing associations operating in that area. And the likelihood is that those 2 housing associations have plans in place to support residents in that area. And this is where the map comes in, it makes a real impact, is why would we be doing that individually when we could be coming together to have one approach to it? And then, so there you've just seen how quick and easy it was to kind of find those key collaboration areas, which is really helpful in terms of supporting our customers in a better way and more efficient way. So I'll pass you now back to Lindsay, who's going to take you through our next steps.
Cheers, thanks Rebecca. Yeah, so we've been launched for a year now, but our journey still very much does continue. We are looking to attract more social housing providers. We currently have about 150,000 assets on there at the moment from 8 different data contributors. And we've just signed up an additional 3, which is fantastic, because the more gaps we can fill in on the map, the more valuable a resource that it becomes. I did want to mention as well, when I was talking about the data, that we don't include any sensitive information, such as customer information. And we also don't include any licensed information, such as addresses. We do use the Gazetteer UPRN as the unique reference for our properties. So we've tried to make the data as open sourcey as possible. We're creating cross-organisation collaboration groups with OneMap very much at the centre of that to drive that data-driven analytics and decision-making. We're going to add further data sets to make sure that we're continuously meeting the needs of our users and just continue the development of OneMap to keep on making it as user-friendly and relevant as possible. So I just want to leave you with a few of the key messages to take away with you. OneMap does and is facilitating data-driven decision-making. It's breaking down those barriers to collaboration that's previously existed before. And hopefully it's helping to support our customers and improve their lives through the efficiencies that we're making. And most importantly, one map is created by social housing providers for social housing providers. And I just want to leave you with a quote from one of our Shine members back in 2024 who said to us, "Just because it's hard doesn't mean you shouldn't do it." And I think we appreciate that sentiment more now than what we did 2 years ago. But it's true, just because it was hard, we shouldn't have attempted to tackle it. So if anybody's interested in finding out more about Shine and One Map, please do reach out to either myself and Rebecca. You can scan the link, the QR code there for LinkedIn, and also our website is available. Thank you very much, everyone.
A big thank you to Lindsay and Rebecca for sharing their story about bringing data from different organisations together to enhance collaborative working. So they use Experience Builder not only to bring in data from different organisations, but also to bring in other layers from the Living Atlas to add context to their work. So we're going to continue this theme into our next session now, where we're going to be sharing some tips and tricks for how to get the best out of Experience Builder. So for our scenario, we are in Scotland, and we're going to be looking at a fictional nature reserve management tool. So one of the app's purposes is to plan and keep track of changes to the network of paths around the reserve. So this might be, for example, changing a gravel path to a boardwalk in order to manage flood risk. So we've borrowed our nature reserve from the RSPB using their data in the Living Atlas. And unfortunately, as we haven't been able to go up to Scotland ourselves and take observations on site, we're using iNaturalist data as well from the Living Atlas. Our infrastructure on our reserve, like our roads, tracks and paths, come from the Ordnance Survey NGD dataset, and our flood risk data comes from SEPA. So without further ado, I'm going to pass over to Nick, who's going to give you a tour of our app.
Thanks, Maddie. So we're going to start off in our app just here, so in the southwest of Scotland, and as you can see, we've got our RSPB reserves highlighted in pink. I'm going to drill down to look at one particular reserve in Mershead to start with, and then I'm going to use my widgets to have a look at the data that we've brought in. So we've got that infrastructure layer that Maddie referenced, so that's looking at paths and tracks in green, light green. We've got our field boundaries, or in brown, we've got our field boundaries in light green, and then we've got our future planned pathworks in bright green. One of the things we can do is to filter that down even further to look at our boundaries and have a look at natural boundaries versus man-made boundaries. So just using that filter, those are our natural boundaries. We've also got the flood risk data from SEPA that we've brought in as a layer. And then finally, we've got those observations from the iNaturalist dataset. And just to break down those observations a bit further, we can look at our chart widgets where we can interrogate that data into both flowers and birds. Now, that's our viewer app. We've also got an edit app. So just jump to that. So as you can see, this is a much more map-centered page than the previous four, and that's to allow for easier editing. We've still got our widgets on the left-hand side that we can bring in our data layers, but they're in a collapsible sidebar to make more room for editing. We've got our editing tools in the top right-hand corner, and we've got our I button, which takes us back to the map viewer. Down here in a collapsible bottom bar, we've also got our tabular data for our pathworks layer, which allows for easier editing of the data set. Now, how do we get from a blank canvas to an application like this? Well, I'm going to hop into the builder and show you around. So, there we go. So we actually didn't start the planning process for the application in Experience Builder. We started in PowerPoint. So we drew out the widgets we were going to use, the layout, where we were going to put things, how we wanted it to look from a user experience standpoint, and this was really helpful in designing the application for optimizing it for the user experience at the end. So once we kind of come up with that design, we started to put it together in Experience Builder, and I'm just going to draw your attention down to the outline tab, bottom left-hand corner. So we've got our viewer map, which is the map we've brought in. And then we've got our column down here. So this column contains an accordion, which is a great way of laying out large widgets so that they don't take up too much space, and we can expand them as and when we want to use them. As you can see, we've got our bookmarks, map layers, etc. in there. And I think one of the cool things you can do is you can edit the look and appearance of those widgets all at the same time. So I'm going to click on the background, and I can change the color so that it matches the rest of the app. So there we go. And just to make it kind of not look like it's part of the map, I can change that appearance so that I can make it look like it's hovering over the app by changing the transparency layer, just like that. Okay. One of the other things we've got is our launch edit widget, which we've handily renamed launch edit. So that just helps us understand or keep track of what those widgets are doing within the app. And then if we hop over to our edit page, we've also got our edit tools in the top right-hand corner. You'll see, if I expand this, they're in a fixed panel, which just helps keep them all aligned and in the same place, and not moving around the screen as we kind of work through the app. As I said, we've also got those, the other widgets that bring in our data sets, but they're in a collapsible sidebars for using the map. So one of the things that really gives Experience Builder and maps their life and purpose is the data that we bring in. And Experience Builder has a whole page dedicated to data. So we can see that we've got 4 data sets that we've brought in. We've got 2 web maps, so one for the edit page and one for the viewer page. Those contain our feature layers and the data sets we've got within them. And then we've also got our feature service for iNaturalist observations. And that we've brought that in as a separate layer so that we can do some processing on those and within the application. So if I take a look at those, so we've got our iNaturalist observations, click on those, and then we have done some processing here. So we, rather this is a global data set, so rather than just bringing that whole global data set in when we're just looking at one small parcel of land in the southwest of Scotland, we've done some filtering. So firstly, we filtered the class and the observations down to aves or birds, and then we filtered it again to the latitude that the RSPB reserve is in. Now that's really, it's okay, but you're thinking that's quite a large piece of land going all the way around the world for one small RSP reserve. So with the addition of Arcade into Experience Builder, we can filter that data set even more. And I'm going to show you how I've done that. So the first thing I'm going to do is bring in that data set from the Living Atlas. I'm going to bring it in as a layer. I'm going to go to the Living Atlas. I'm going to search for iNaturalist, and we can see there that we've got that data set that we can bring in. Now, as I said, we want to filter that data set down to just that reserve and just that polygon of that reserve. So I handily wrote some Arcade earlier this morning, and I'm just going to talk you through what that does. So I've pasted that in. So you'll see that we're first bringing in that feature layer, the iNaturalist observations from the Living Atlas in row 3, and we can see that it's got 112 million plus observations, and that's quite a lot for the application to process all in one go. So we filtered that down to latitude, which is what you saw earlier, and we can still see that still leaves us with 7 million observations across that geography. So to make that kind of an even smoother process, we're going to filter down to just the polygon of the reserve. So the thing we need to do first in line 11 is bring in the RSP reserve from ArcGIS Online, and then we're going to bring in the geometry and then break that down and apply that filter to the observations. And we can see that we're down to 330, which is a much more manageable layer for us to process. So now we've brought that set in, one of the things I can do is I'm going to add a chart into the application. So from the widgets, I've searched for chart, and I've got it here, so I can just drag and drop that anywhere onto the application, but actually I want to bring it into the accordion that we've got here. So I'm going to drop that in, and then I need to select the data set that I want to choose. You can see that we've got the iNaturalist observations here. So I'm going to click on that, and then I'm going to choose that we want it to be for birds. So there we go, it's a chart. That's what we're showing. I'm going to pass you over to Maddie, who's going to talk you through some actions and triggers within Experience Builder.
Thank you so much, Nick. So in my part of the session, we're going to be taking a look at how you can create those dynamic interactions between the different widgets in your application. So we're currently in the edit page of our app, and this is made for editing our path works layer in bright green. So this is the planned maintenance to our footpath network. Now we can edit our pathworks layer using the edit widget, which you can find in the widget controller up at the top here. But another way that I like to edit is using the table widget, and I can find this in our sidebar right at the bottom here. Now this shows all of the pathworks features, so there are 5 of them at once in this table, and you can see that we've got a task ID, we have a current surface, be it gravel or on surface, and then we've got a new surface that we want to change our surface to. We also have a scheduled date and even an elevation. So I want to draw your attention to this last pathworks feature down here, 202.508. So we currently don't have a new surface for this. And what I want to do is just interrogate this feature a little bit more, find out a bit more about it. So I'm going to select it in the table just by clicking on it. And I now want to zoom into the feature on the map. So we can do this using built-in data actions, which are built into the table widget. So there is no setting up of this at all. This is just built-in functionality. And I can go over to these 4 circles over here. This is our Actions tab. And we've got some actions that we can apply. So we've got actions for our selected feature. We can zoom, pan, show it on the map. We've also got some actions for the entirety of the table, like setting a filter. Now I want to zoom in, so I'm going to click Zoom to. And you can see that we've zoomed in to our feature. Now if I collapse the table for a minute, you can see that we've got this diagonal blue swathe of flood risk area across the map here. And this is going to influence what my new surface is going to be. So if I bring up my table widget again, I can change this new surface to boardwalk. I can elevate it as well. And I can set a scheduled date for tomorrow, keep everybody on their toes. And it's as easy as that. But what if I knew that every time I wanted to select a feature in my table, I knew I wanted to zoom in, and I didn't want to go into my actions and select zoom to. So there's a way that we can do this, and if I hop into our app builder now, I'm going to show you how we can do this. So we're also, again, in our edit page, I'm going to go and open up our table widget and select it. On the right-hand side, we've got our settings, and I'm going to go into actions here. So we've got 2 actions, 2 action tabs within this action tab here. We've got message actions and also data actions. So these data actions, if I click on this, these are our predefined actions that we can toggle off and on depending on what we want within these 4 dots in the table. And these really enhance user control because you need to select the feature and then select the action that you'd like. But looking at message actions, these are what can enhance your user automation. So we're going to select a feature and automatically zoom in. So to set these up, we can start by adding a trigger. And this trigger for us will be selecting a feature within the table, so recording selection changes. I can now select the widget that I want to target, and as Nick's really helpfully renamed these widgets, I know that I want to target my edit map, not just map 1 or 2. So I'll click on that, and then I can select the action zoom to. Now that's done, making sure I'm in live view, I can click on my feature, and we see we automatically zoom in without having to go and select one of our predefined options. Now, another action I'd like to talk to you about is the action that synchronizes our 2 maps between pages. So I'm in our edit page right now, and if I click on our lovely eye icon, I can head back into our viewing page. So I do this, and I see that I'm in the exact same place in our viewer map as I am in my edit page. And this is really useful, saves you kind of navigating back to the exact same feature every single time you're switching pages. So let's take a look at how I've set this up. I'm going to turn off live view and select my viewer map. Now I go over to my settings. I'll click on actions again, and I can see that I've got 3 message actions this time set up. So my trigger is extent changes. So this is when the extent of my map changes in my viewer map. and we're targeting the edit map in the first two. And this means that when I change the extent in my viewer map, we're going to pan to and zoom to the exact same place in our edit map. And that just keeps everything synchronized. Now you can also see that we've got a third action here, and this is targeting the data. This is the underlying data, and this is the data that it's being brought in to these chart widgets. And we're saying that when we change the extent, we're going to filter those data records. And this is this means that when we zoom in and out of our map, our widgets in our chart and our observations update automatically. So that was our kind of quick look into actions. I'd now like to take another quick look into customizing text within widgets using Arcade. So if I head back into our edit page and find our list widget within our widget controller at the top, I'll open up our list widget, and you can see that we've got our pathworks layer again, a bit like in the table. So we've got our task ID, we've got our current surface and our new surface, and we've also got this due in the next 7 days with a color. And the color changes as well when we hover over things, the different panels within our list. Now you might remember from our table that the field within our pathworks layer had a scheduled date, but it didn't have a number of days until this was due to be planned. So I'm going to show you how we've set this up now. I'll come off live view, I'll click into our list widget again and click into our block. And you can see that we've got some dynamic content and some Arcade underlying this. So the task ID, the current surface, and the new surface, they're being pulled in with dynamic content. And if we go to our dynamic content button here, this is where we can pull in any of the fields that we'd like from this dynamic content box. We can even add a statistic like count or average if we want, and this pulls it in for each of the features. And we've also got this Arcade here. So let's take a look at what this is doing. I'll hover over it, and then I'll click on the Arcade editor and bring it up. And I'm just also going to make it a little bit bigger for you guys so you can see it. So this is a short Arcade script, and what we're doing is we're setting a message and a color to be returned at the end of the script. So we're setting it up, and the first thing that we do is define our variables. And then on line 5, we want to check if our scheduled field is empty or not. So if it's empty or null, we're going to return the message unscheduled, and we're going to return the color red. If it's not empty, so if it's got a date inside it, we're going to use this dateDiff function, and this is going to calculate the number of days between the scheduled date and today. And if the number of days is less than 7, we want to return the text message next 7 days and a green color. If the number of days is less than 30 but greater than 7, we'll return next 30 days and a blue color. And if it's later than 30 days, we're going to return later and a purple color. We then return our text with a color and a size at the end of our Arcade script. And that's what gives us our color. I realize I'm zoomed in, so let me zoom back out. So that's what gives us our color in live view. Now you might have also noticed that when I was hovering over those widgets, I was also getting different colors. And this is using the exact same Arcade script. And I've just put it within my states here, within my list settings. So within states, I've expanded this here. I've gone to hover and switched on my hover state. I've clicked into my hover settings, and I've gone to dynamic style and toggled this on. Now within this setting, I've got the Arcade script that I used, but we just want to return the color this time, so we're just returning the color without a text message. Now that's all we've got time for today, so I'm going to hand back to Nick, who's going to give us a little overview of what we covered.
Brilliant. Thanks, Maddie. So, as a quick recap of what we've been through today, so we've looked at the different data views and data sources that we can bring in to our Experience Builder as feature layers or web maps. We've had a look at the importance of laying out our widgets within our application to maximize and improve the end user experience. And then Maddie has taken us through the actions and triggers that automate some of the actions that we want to perform whilst we're using our application. And with both of those, we've looked at the addition of Arcade to Experience Builder to enhance those actions and tailor them to suit our needs. So with that, I just want to say a big thank you to Maddie and a huge thank you to Rebecca and Lindsay for sharing their story at Shine. And that's all we've got time for today. Thank you.